Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Mike took a deep breath before placing the last suitcase in the truck's trunk. He had always enjoyed these hunting trips with Dave. It was an old tradition, something that disconnected him from the world, from work, and from everyday worries. 4 days away from everything, just him, his friend, and nature. Emily appeared at the door with a smile on her face, arms crossed. "Are you sure you don't want me to go with you?" she asked, half laughing. Mike shook his head. "Not this time, Em. Hunting isn't exactly your favorite thing." She laughed and shook her head, as if saying, "I knew you'd say that," but then came closer to give him a kiss. Mike held her by the waist, savoring that last moment before the trip. He had no idea that, in just a few hours, that kiss would leave such a bitter taste. "I love you," he said. Emily blinked and smiled. "I love you too." Dave was already in the truck, scrolling through his phone as he waited for his friend to finish saying goodbye. When Mike got in and shut the door, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Emily standing at the front door, waving. "She really loves you, man," Dave said, not taking his eyes off the screen. Mike chuckled, started the car, and headed down the street. The first few minutes of the drive were calm. The radio was playing something quietly enough that they could still talk. But Dave, in the passenger seat, was focused on his phone, scrolling up and down with a strange look on his face. "What's up?" Mike asked, noticing his friend's unusual silence. "Man," Dave began, hesitating. He cleared his throat and looked at Mike, as if he had to be certain he should say what he was about to say. "Just say it," Mike insisted, already feeling a knot in his chest. Dave turned his phone screen toward him. At first, Mike took a moment to understand what he was looking at. It was a dating site profile. The photo was clear. The name was different, but that blonde woman with expressive eyes was, without a doubt, Emily. Mike felt the air leave his lungs. He blinked a few times, trying to believe his eyes were playing tricks on him. This can't be real," he murmured, taking Dave's phone to look more closely. There were photos of her he recognized, photos he had taken himself. And then he saw something that made his stomach churn: messages. Emily was actively chatting with other men. And it wasn't innocent talk. A knot formed in Mike's throat. His chest rose and fell quickly, his breathing heavy. A wave of heat spread through his body, a mix of disbelief and anger. "How'd you find this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was by accident. You know those fake profiles that show up on these sites? I was just messing around, scrolling through random profiles, and then, boom. Emily. I thought it had to be a coincidence, but man, look at this." Mike scrolled further and saw that Emily's last visits were just a few hours ago. Before he left for the trip, before the goodbye kiss, before "I love you too." He felt his stomach twist. The truck kept moving, but Mike didn't know how his hands were still on the wheel. His world seemed to have flipped upside down in a matter of seconds. Everything felt like a lie. That goodbye kiss, the loving words, all their years of marriage. Now it all felt dirty. Dave stayed silent, letting Mike process the situation. He knew no words could lessen that pain. Mike blinked a few times, trying to keep it together. He didn't want to lose control, not right then. But his heart was in pieces. "I have to go back," he said, his voice rough. "I have to confront her right now." Dave placed a hand on his shoulder. "Man, I know this feels like a punch in the gut, but think carefully. Do you really want to catch her off guard? If we go back now, she might deny it or make up any excuse. But if we wait, you can get proof. And once you have that, there won't be any excuses." Mike took a deep breath. He wanted to turn around on that road, drive home, and ask Emily to her face why on earth she was doing this. But Dave was right. Confronting her now would give her a chance to lie, slip away, manipulate the situation. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to calm down. "I never imagined I'd be in this position," he murmured, more to himself than to Dave. His friend sighed. "Nobody imagines it. But now that you're here, you have to keep a cool head." Mike gripped the steering wheel. He wasn't the type to run away from problems. But this wasn't a battle he could win with impulsiveness. His chest hurt as if part of him had been ripped away. The trip that was supposed to be a time to unwind had turned into an inner battlefield. He had no idea how he would get through the next few days, and knowing that, while he was out there, planning his next move, Emily might be at home, laughing, having fun, with someone else. He swallowed hard. If there was one thing Mike knew, it was that he wouldn't just let this slide. The silence in the truck was thick. The road stretched out ahead like an endless line, but in Mike's mind, everything was a tangled mess of chaotic thoughts. Emily's betrayal weighed heavily on his chest, a blow he never saw coming. His marriage, which he believed so solid, suddenly felt fake. Dave kept his eyes on the scenery, giving Mike time to process what he'd discovered. No words could really ease the damage. But after a few minutes, he broke the silence. "You need to think about what you're going to do," he said, keeping his tone steady yet gentle. Mike clenched the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He wanted to do something, anything. He wanted to confront her, yell, ask why. But each time he opened his mouth to speak, all that came out was a heavy sigh. "What am I supposed to do?" He let out a humorless laugh. "What's left to do, Dave? My wife is cheating on me. The woman I share my life with is out there looking for other men, while I'm still with her, thinking we're happy." The knot in his throat tightened, but he refused to break down. He wouldn't cry. Not now. Dave took a deep breath. "Look, I know your first reaction was to rush home and solve this now, but think about it. If you just show up and confront her, she might deny it. She could say it's a fake profile, that it's not serious, whatever. But if you catch her in the act, she can't run." Mike gritted his teeth. Just the idea of seeing her with another man made his stomach turn. "And what if I don't want to wait?" he asked, his voice seething with controlled anger. "Then you can go home right now, and she can erase everything, come up with some excuse, and manipulate you. Or you can bear this pain for a few days, gather absolute proof, and know exactly who she really is." Mike's mind was spinning. The idea of dragging this out was unbearable. But what if Dave was right? What if he needed to see it with his own eyes so there'd be no doubts? The radio kept playing some random song, but he barely heard it. The world felt muted, like he was stuck inside a bubble of frustration, hurt, and anger. He didn't want to live in uncertainty. He didn't want to give Emily the chance to weasel out of this with some well-crafted lie. He inhaled deeply. "Fine," he finally said. "We'll go with that plan." The hunting trip, which had been meant as a getaway, turned into a silent torment. Mike tried to focus, tried to join in conversation and pretend everything was fine, but it wasn't. Every time he picked up his phone, his hand shook as he fought the urge to send Emily a message. To ask where she was. What she was doing. But he held back. On the second night at camp, while the fire crackled and lit up their faces, Dave noticed Mike hadn't touched his food. "You need to eat, man," he said, poking at his own piece of meat with a makeshift fork. "You're no good to yourself if you go back completely worn out." Mike exhaled heavily. "I just can't." Dave tossed a small stick into the fire. "You know, I've been through something similar. Not exactly the same, but close. Finding out the person you love betrayed you is like getting stabbed in the back. It's not just about the cheating, it's that everything you believed was real, never was." Mike stared into the flames, his eyes reflecting the orange glow. "Do you think she's done this before?" Dave paused to think before answering. I don't know. But that's the thing, if she did it now, what would stop her from having done it before, or from doing it again? His words hit hard. Mike didn't sleep that night. He lay there, looking at the stars, wondering how his life had turned into a nightmare so quickly. The next morning, Dave sat beside him, holding a cup of hot coffee. "Let's cut this trip short." Mike looked at him. "Are you sure?" Dave nodded. "This isn't helping you. You need to go back and face this head-on." Mike ran his hands over his face, feeling the stubble growing in. "Then let's catch her in the act." They started packing right away. The adrenaline was already kicking in. But behind all the anger, there was a subtle fear growing inside Mike, because he knew that once he saw the truth with his own eyes, there'd be no turning back. The drive home felt longer than before. Every mile was one more blow to Mike's chest, a countdown to a moment he knew would change his life forever. He wanted to believe there was still a reasonable explanation, some tiny possibility that it was all just a misunderstanding. But the truth weighed on him like a stone. Emily was cheating. He just needed to see it for himself. The truck moved in silence, with Dave driving while Mike stared at the road ahead, fists clenched on his knees. Neither of them said much. Tension hung in the air, the mutual understanding that they were about to cross a point of no return. When they got to Mike's neighborhood, his heart started racing. Everything looked so normal, so frustratingly ordinary, like any other day. Porch lights were on, a few cars were parked along the street. Anyone seeing his truck might think he was just getting back from a weekend away. But he knew he was about to see something that would wipe out all sense of normal in his life. Dave parked on the corner, far enough that the truck wouldn't be noticed. Mike took a deep breath and felt a chill run down his spine as he looked toward his own house. The lights were on. He got out carefully, as though any sudden movement might shatter whatever illusion was left. Dave followed right behind, not saying a word. Their footsteps were the only sound aside from a soft breeze rustling the trees. Mike tried the back door. Locked. He expected that. He took the key from his pocket and turned it slowly in the lock. As he opened the door, he caught the familiar smell of home mixed with something else. Men's cologne. His heart hammered so hard he thought he might pass out. Every muscle in his body felt ready to explode, but he forced himself to go on. He heard muffled laughter from upstairs. His blood froze. He climbed the stairs slowly, feeling each step creak under his feet as though the house itself was warning him about what was coming. When he reached the hallway, the laughter stopped. The bedroom door was almost closed, with only a small gap revealing shadows moving inside. Mike took a deep breath. This was it. He pushed the door hard, and the scene in front of him burned into his mind like a scar. Emily was there, in the middle of the bed, the sheets in disarray around her. The man next to her turned his face in shock, frozen, as if he couldn't believe it himself. For a second, nobody moved. The silence was deafening. Then Emily's eyes went wide, and she pulled the sheet around herself, as if that could hide what was blatantly obvious. "Mike," she started, voice shaking. He didn't respond. His gaze locked on her, but his mind was chaos. His stomach lurched, his hands trembled. A massive wave of fury, disgust, and heartbreak washed over him. The man, desperate to avoid a confrontation, tried to get up, but Dave blocked the doorway. "Don't even think about it," Dave said in a low, warning tone. Mike finally found his voice, though it came out rough and almost unrecognizable. "How could you?" Emily looked at him, tears already filling her eyes, but Mike didn't see any remorse there, just panic. She wasn't sorry she cheated, she was sorry she got caught. "Mike, please, let me explain," she begged, but her voice sounded thin, hollow. "Explain what?" He gave a humorless laugh. He pulled his phone from his pocket and, without a word, started recording. Emily's eyes went wide. Mike, don't what? Don't show what you did. Don't show who you really are. He took a step closer, keeping the camera on her. She glanced desperately at her lover, as if he could help, but the man just looked down, clueless. The irony of it all hit Mike in a wave. For years, he thought he knew Emily. Thought she was his partner, the person he'd build a life with. But here she was, naked in the bed they shared, with a stranger who'd probably been laughing behind his back. The pain was unbearable. He stopped recording and lowered his phone. It's over, Emily. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but Mike was already walking out. He didn't need to hear anything else. Mike left the house without looking back. The cool night air barely registered, his body felt hot with rage, humiliation, and 1,000 emotions exploding at once. He hardly noticed his trembling hands as he slipped his phone into his pocket. Everything seemed to move in slow motion, as though the world had lost its sound and all that remained was the frantic beating of his heart. Dave followed close behind, shutting the door with a thud. Neither of them spoke as they headed back to the truck parked on the corner. Mike felt that if he said anything right then, something inside him would snap for good. Once in the car, Dave started the engine and glanced at his friend. Do you want to go to my place? Mike stared at the street ahead, mind blank, as though trying to make sense of what had just happened. Part of him wanted to believe it wasn't real, that he was still on that hunting trip and about to wake up from a bad dream. But the smell of that cologne lingered in his nose, and the image of Emily in that bed was seared into his mind. Just drive, he muttered, too exhausted to decide anything. The engine rumbled, and the truck rolled down the road. They spent several minutes in total silence. Mike leaned forward, elbows on his knees, rubbing his face with his hands, trying to gather his thoughts. But there was no way to organize the chaos inside him. A tightness in his chest, a raw hurt, and a sense of betrayal more painful than any physical wound he'd ever had. You need a lawyer, Dave said at last, breaking the silence. Mike let out a flat, joyless laugh. That's it? Is that how this ends? Dave gripped the steering wheel. I know it's not what you want to hear, but you need to think about your next step. You have everything on video now. You need to make sure she doesn't turn this against you. Mike looked out the window. He knew Dave was right, but right then, it all felt pointless. He had just caught the woman he loved in bed with another man. What was supposed to come next? Was it really all about paperwork now? He closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. I never thought this would happen to me, he murmured. Dave let out a short sigh. Nobody does. But you can't let her twist the story. You have to act fast, before she tries to manipulate you. Mike wanted to argue, to say he knew Emily and that she wouldn't do that. But he didn't know anything anymore. The woman he saw in that bedroom wasn't the Emily he thought he knew. By the next morning, Mike felt terrible. He hadn't slept at all. He spent the night on Dave's couch, staring at the ceiling, reliving that scene 1,000 times in his head. He tried to eat something, but it tasted like nothing. He felt worn down, like he'd aged years in just a few hours. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Emily. She had called over 20 times, sent messages and voice notes, all ignored. He couldn't bear to hear her voice. He didn't want to know what she had to say. But then a message popped up on the screen, and this time the words made his blood run cold. Mike, answer me. I need to explain. It wasn't just cheating. I did this because I thought you were infertile. What on earth was that supposed to mean? Mike frowned, heart pounding. He stared at his phone as though it were a code he couldn't break. Infertile? Where was this coming from? He jumped to his feet, a surge of adrenaline rushing through him. He wanted to confront her. He wanted to know what she was talking about. But one thing was clear. This betrayal was bigger than he thought. The park felt like a cruel backdrop for that conversation, somewhere meant to bring peace, now turning into the setting for yet another open wound. Mike's chest felt heavy as he walked to the bench where Emily was sitting. Her face looked worn, eyes red as if she hadn't slept, but he felt no sympathy. He just wanted answers, and then he wanted to move on. He stopped in front of her, arms crossed, jaw clenched. "Just talk, Emily." She lifted her eyes to him, hesitant, and took a deep breath before speaking. "I know you hate me. I know nothing I say can erase what I did. But, there's something you need to know." Mike showed no reaction. "You've got 2 minutes." She swallowed hard and looked down at her hands, like she was searching for the courage to speak. "I tried to get pregnant for years, Mike. You know that. At first, I thought it was stress, or that we just had to wait. But as time went by and nothing happened, I went to a doctor. I had every test done." Mike's heart started pounding, but his face stayed cold. "And?" Emily clutched her hands in her lap, her voice trembling. "All my tests came back normal. There is absolutely nothing wrong with me." Silence fell between them, suffocating. Mike didn't blink. "What are you trying to say?" She looked at him, tears brimming in her eyes. "The doctor told me that if nothing was wrong with me, then there was a 100% chance the problem was with you." Mike blinked a few times, like his brain was struggling to process this. "You're telling me I'm infertile?" I don't know. But that's what the doctor said. Statistically, if I'm fine, then it has to be you." Mike felt a knot in his stomach. "And you thought the solution was to sleep with another man?" She dropped her head, shoulders shaking. "I was desperate, Mike. You know how much I've always wanted a child. I felt like there was no way out." He let out a humorless laugh. "No way out? All you had to do was talk to me. Instead, you decided to cheat." Emily raised her tearful eyes to him. "I was afraid of losing you." He shook his head, feeling only anger and disgust. "You already lost me." He turned and walked away, not looking back. Emily could keep talking, keep crying, keep trying to justify herself. But for him, there was nothing left to say. Their marriage ended the moment she chose to cheat. Driving back to Dave's place was a blur. Mike barely noticed traffic lights, signs, or the streets rushing by in a haze. His mind spun with the last conversation he'd had with Emily. Every word echoed like a gunshot in his head. "If nothing's wrong with me, then there's a 100% chance it's you." What was he supposed to do with that? He gripped the steering wheel so hard that his knuckles went white. It wasn't enough that Emily had destroyed their marriage by cheating. No. She had to twist the knife. She wanted him to think this was his fault. But was she telling the truth? Could he really be infertile? He never suspected anything like that. He and Emily had tried for a child, sure, but he was never worried that it might not happen eventually. Now, though, after everything she said, he couldn't stop replaying every moment, every year that went by with no pregnancy. What if? He swallowed hard. What if she was right? A hot flash of anger surged through him. He pulled into Dave's garage and sat there, engine running, hands locked on the wheel, staring at nothing. He took a long breath, trying to control the wave of emotions. He heard the house door open, and a moment later, Dave appeared outside. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, leaning against the car. Mike let out a hollow laugh. "Almost." Dave frowned. "What happened?" Mike sighed and turned off the engine. "She said she had every test done and that nothing's wrong with her. The doctor apparently told her that if it's not her, it must be me." Dave was quiet for a second. "And do you believe that?" Mike ran his hand over his face, exhausted. "I don't know. I don't know what to believe anymore. Man, Dave began, picking his words carefully, look at what she did to you. Look at where you are now. Are you really going to let her plant that doubt in your head? Mike knew he was supposed to say no. He was supposed to shrug it off and move on. But he couldn't. What if it's true? He asked, finally giving voice to the thought that had been hammering at him. Dave drew a long breath. Then if it's true, that's something you deal with yourself, not through her word. You can get tested and know for sure. But don't let this destroy you more than it already has. Mike nodded slowly. I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it for me. And right then and there, he made his decision. Over the following days, he scheduled a test and waited for the results without telling anyone. Not even Dave. It was something he had to face alone. When the results came in, he opened the envelope with trembling hands. Then he saw the truth. He read the cold, technical words, but the message was clear. He wasn't infertile. He had a slight difficulty, something that could lower the odds a bit, but nothing that made it impossible for him to have children. The doctor assured him that, with time and patience, there was no reason he couldn't become a father one day. Mike let out a low, shaky laugh, feeling a mixture of relief and fury course through him. Emily had lied. Or worse, she convinced herself of something without giving him a chance to figure it out together. She destroyed everything based on an assumption. That night, Mike sat alone on Dave's porch, a beer in his hand, staring at the sky. For years, he believed Emily was his partner, that they faced everything together. But in the end, she made decisions on her own. She doubted him. She cheated. She decided he was the problem, without ever letting him find out the truth with her. Now, she was no longer part of his life. Despite the pain, he realized he was free. Free to rebuild. Free to start over. And above all, free to someday find someone who truly understood the meaning of love and loyalty. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.